Welcome to the Avoidance of Foreclosure and Eviction section of the Dodd-Frank Prep course brought to you by NHNLA. We're in section 6.3, FHA Mortgage Default Assistance. FHA Mortgage Default Assistance. The FHA, which stands for Federal Housing Administration, the purpose of that is to extend homeownership and rental housing opportunities for people not adequately served by the private mortgage market. There are two types of forbearance plans in the FHA Mortgage Default Assistance Program. There's informal and then there's formal forbearance plans. Informal plans are oral. They're 3 months or less. Formal forbearance plans are written and can range from 3 months to 6 months. There is also a special forbearance, and that is a written or formal forbearance between the servicer and an unemployed borrower, allowing partial payments while looking for a job. The unemployed borrower must be at least 3 months past due, but no more than 12. And when we say past due, we're including the principal, the interest, the taxes, and the insurance. And if you're following along in your book, we're at the bottom of page 2, moving on to page 3. The FHA Mortgage Default Assistance Program also allows for loan modifications. Now, loan modifications can include a change in the interest rate. It can include capitalization of delinquent principal, interest, and escrow items. It could be an extension of the mortgage term or a reamortization of the balance due. But FHA does not allow principal reduction on their mortgage loan modification programs. So they won't just write off a principal balance on their loan modification. There is something they will do with principal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. FHA also has a HAMP program, and the FHA HAMP typically involves a combination of the loan modification as well as what's called a partial claim. And as we'll learn a little bit later, they don't have to always go together, but FHA does allow that. So a partial claim may include an amount needed to cover the past due or the arrears in loan payments, and potentially an additional amount for principal deferment. Now, on the previous slide, we said they don't allow principal reduction, which is true, but they will allow for principal deferment. And what that is putting the principal amount on as a second mortgage, and so that's not due and payable until the first mortgage is paid off, and that makes that mortgage a little more affordable. So with the FHA HAMP program, a mortgagee may use, like I said, the standalone partial claim without the loan mod only if the following conditions are met. And again, if you're following along in your book, this is going to be, let's see, on page 4. Yes, on page 4. So the following conditions must be met. The mortgager's current interest rate is at or below market. They'll allow it for that reason. They'll also allow it if the mortgager's or homeowner's current mortgage payment is at or below the target monthly payment. And then thirdly, the mortgager has to qualify for FHA HAMP. Now, with the partial claim, the maximum value of all outstanding partial claims for a given loan cannot exceed 30% of the outstanding unpaid principal balance. So your homeowner may have had a partial claim in the past, and they can have another one. It's just both of those together cannot exceed 30% of the unpaid principal balance. And let's talk about that a little bit. So if we're calculating the partial claim, what we're going to do is we're going to add together the arrearages or the past due amounts. We're going to add together the legal fees and the foreclosure costs related to canceling any foreclosure action. And then, if necessary, the principal deferment amount is going to be included in that. And then we're going to compare that with 30% of the outstanding unpaid principal balance. Now, if we're doing the standalone loan mod, without the partial claim, that's allowed if the affordable mortgage payment can be achieved by reamortizing the mortgage for 360 months at or below the market rate. And of course, the mortgager still has to qualify for FHA HAMP. Now let's talk about market interest rate. Market interest rate is no more than 50 basis points greater than the most recent Freddie Mac weekly primary mortgage market survey rate. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Absolutely. But if you want to think of it in this term, it can't be more than 0.5% over the Freddie Mac interest rate. And if you see the website we have here, www.freddiemac.com/PMMS/. If you go there, you'll be able to see what the rate is for that day, and you know that you can go up to 0.5 over after you've rounded it up to the nearest 1/8. So that's the rate we're looking for when we say the market interest rate. And this is what that website looks like. It's going to give you the 30-year rate, the 15-year rate, and some other information, but this is just to give you an idea. All right? Okay, so let's move on to FHA home retention waterfall. You've probably heard quite a bit about waterfall, especially with regards to HAMP. FHA also has a waterfall, and if you turn in your books to page 7, you will see the waterfall information. And let's just go through very quickly the 6 steps of the loss mitt waterfall for FHA. The first thing a counselor needs to do is determine, has the homeowner experienced a verifiable loss of income or increase in living expenses? Now, this is very important, the word verifiable, because if your homeowner has been self-employed and not claiming any income, then that's going to be difficult to verify. Or if they're getting paid but they're not reporting it on their taxes, again, very difficult to verify. But if they're W-2'd and they've been laid off, for example, or there's a divorce situation and so the income has been verifiably reduced, or let's say their interest rate has, they were in an adjustable rate mortgage and it's gone up 2%. So that's a verifiable increase in living expenses. So again, the first step is to check to make sure that there is a verifiable loss of income or increase in living expenses. And if there has been, then we move on to step 2. If there has not been, then all we can do is an informal or formal forbearance or repayment plan. All right, so let's look at step number 2. 1 or more mortgagors are currently employed. That's pretty self-explanatory. So if you've got somebody working, we can move to step 3. And that means they have a verifiable source of income. If you don't have somebody working, then we need to look at that special forbearance. Remember, because that's the one that allows for a reduced payment if you're unemployed. All right, so step 3 now says, check to see if they have a surplus in income that is at least the greater of $300 or the greater than 15% of their net income. So they want to see that there's some money left over at the end of the day. And if there is, we can move to step 4. If there's not, then maybe we need to look at putting them in an FHA HAMP program so we can get that their housing payment reduced and make it more affordable. Now, let's say there is. We're going to look at step 4. Step 4 wants to know if 85% of that surplus income is sufficient to cure the arrears within 6 months. So can we take part of that at least $300 or part of that 15% of net income and pay off whatever's past due in the next 6 months? If we can, then we can look at a formal forbearance, because like we said earlier, the formal forbearance is the written forbearance, and you can go up to 6 months on that. If their extra money that they're making each month is not enough to pay off their past due amount, then we look at a loan modification. So then we go to step 5 for a loan modification. One of the things that's very important here is in order for FHA to agree to a loan mod, the modification needs to reduce the monthly payment by at least $100 or 10% of the payment. Let me say that once again. Modification would reduce monthly payment by at least the greater of 10% or $100. If it will, then we can do a loan mod. If it won't, then we look at going to do an FHA HAMP, and we would move on to step 6. And then step 6 just shows all the things that we talked about already about FHA HAMP, whether we do a partial claim, whether we do a loan mod, or a combination of the two, and how to calculate the principal deferment amount. And that information, again, is at the bottom of page 7 going on to page 8. So take a minute and just review that information. Make sure you understand those steps. Now, just so you know, a lender is going to do that already. But as an advocate for your homeowner, you want to make sure you understand this process. Will you need to do this on most of your files? Probably not, because your lender, like I said, is going to run it through that program anyway and say, hey, this is what they qualify for. But if you get a denial, then you want to be able to go back and say, okay, why is this denied? Did they follow this waterfall? I went through this waterfall and my client looks like they're eligible, so why aren't they qualified? And then you've got some teeth to go back to them with and say, hey, we need to take a look at this. Now, let's move on. One last thing I want to talk about, and of course my screen's locked up here for just a second, so bear with me, is I want to bring special attention to step 5 and 6, because one of the caveats that I think sometimes we miss is we go, oh, okay, well, they've experienced a hardship, they've got somebody working, they're not making enough money to cover the full payment, because a lot of people have taken jobs making less money. And so we think, well, they automatically qualify for a loan mod. Absolutely. Well, not necessarily, because you see, for them to qualify for a loan mod, whether it's HAMP or just a regular mod, their payment has to be reduced by 10% or $100. So if that doesn't work, they still may not qualify. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. If you have any questions, just let us know. Thank you.